Now you can see the medial surface of the hemisphere. This will be the superior margin of the hemisphere. The frontal pole, the occipital pole is over here. What the cells and gyri and other structures we can observe here? The centrally located, the very noticeable structure called the corpus callosum, which contains of the commissural fibers communicating in the right and left hemispheres. It consists of the rostrum, genu, corpus, and the splenium. Entire structure known as a corpus callosum. Above the corpus callosum, we have the supracallosal sulcus, which lodges the anterior cerebral artery, mainly supplying the medial surface of the hemisphere. Above the supracallosal sulcus, we can see the cingulate gyrus. This here is the cingulate gyrus related to the limbic system. Cingulate means the belt, so the gyrus as a belt is wrapping around the corpus callosum. Superiorly to the cingulate gyrus, there is the sulcus, which called the cingulate sulcus. Over here, this is the cingulate sulcus, and separates the superior frontal gyrus and cingulate gyrus. In between the frontal and parietal regions, there is an area known as a paracentral lobule, in between the precentral and postcentral gyrus. This will be the superior parietal lobule. Then we have the sulcus, which is very visible here. This sulcus is known as a parieto-occipital sulcus. It separates the parietal lobe and occipital lobe. Over here, in perpendicular to the parieto-occipital sulcus, we have the calcarine sulcus, which is the primary visual cortex, or cortex 17, according to the Brodmann's map. Around the cortex 17, we can see the cortex 18, Brodmann's area 18 and 19, which are associated cortical areas. This part in front of parieto-occipital sulcus is known as a precuneus, and this triangular region called the cuneus. Come back to the corpus callosum. Below the corpus callosum, we can see the septum pellucidum, which separates the right and left lateral ventricles. Under the septum pellucidum, we can see the fornix. This is a white matter fibers which communicate the hippocampus and the mammillary body of the hypothalamus. Below to the fornix, you can see the thalamus, hypothalamus, and mammillary bodies. This here is the optic chiasma, and infundibulum should be here with the attached pineal gland. Following downwards from the diencephalon, the cavity of the diencephalon is the third ventricle. Over here we can see the foramen of Monroe, which leads into the cavity of the lateral ventricle. The posterior part of the third ventricle opens into the cerebral aqueduct, which communicates the diencephalon and the fourth ventricle. This here the cerebral aqueduct, and this here we have the fourth ventricle. This part of the brainstem is known as the midbrain, having the superior and inferior colliculi of the midbrain. I'll call it tectum, and the tegmentum, which also constitute the cerebral peduncles. Below to the midbrain we have the pons, and below to the pons we have the medulla.